Hello, everyone, and welcome to Deep Dive Zone, a Sonic the Hedgehog reread series for fans of all shapes and sizes. As usual, I'm your host, Evan, joined by my cohorts, Lauren and Bruce, and today we are continuing our journey through Archie Sonic with issue 26 through 29, plus another special.
Yeah.
We are starting off today with Sonic the Hedgehog number 26, where they're getting shot.
On the cover, I suppose that is not inaccurate. Not with a regular gun, though, of course, because
No.
it's like the winter issue or whatever.
Yeah, which we're recording this in October, and it certainly hasn't been winterish here.
It was like 85 today. I hated it.
Yeah. Anyway, this first story of this issue is called Way, Way Past Cool, which is written, I think, by Angelo De Cesare. This issue doesn't have credits for the first story.
Noticed that. That was weird.
And drawn by Monic, which is, not even that surprising. Dr. Robotnik uses a weather machine to send Mobius into a new ice age. Sonic and the gang team up with a group of Arctic Mobians to wage Cold War on Robotnik.
I like that the bit of Adventures of Sonic carries over, where we get random backstory information on Robotnik, such as in this one, apparently Robotnik took a 2-week night course in meteorology at one point, and that helped inform his weather machine.
I think it's telling that you have to get a certain amount into the story to even see Robotnik, but that's our first note, because everything else about this is on autopilot.
Honestly, kind of. I mean, it's almost like it just kind of starts off as the generic beach episode.
And then just becomes the generic snow day episode.
Honestly, yeah. It's, kind of
The major thing that this issue contributes, and I'm using major very loosely, is this group of Arctic Mobians who are not the Arctic Freedom Fighters. They are not another Freedom Fighter faction for some reason. They might as well be for all the difference it makes, but yeah, we've got generic penguin, generic seal, generic polar bear, generic wolf, and generic ermine? I'm not familiar with that one.
I do like that the whole reason for Robotnik freezing everything is just so he can track the freedom fighter's body heat, which, like, there has to be a much more direct way to do that, but I could see Robotnik going over the top and just creating winter anyway.
No, I definitely agree that there's better ways to do it, but it's very in character for Robotnik to do things just way overboard.
I'll say this. Do you guys remember how we were talking about how they would write and draw an issue earlier and just save it as backup?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Well, you may notice that Sally doesn't have her vest.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the reason she keeps losing her vest?
I think so.
Assumingly, that does make sense.
Huh, okay.
So, yeah, this one's a bit of a filler story. Even though these characters technically show up again, I don't think that there's any, like, big important moments with them later. I think they're just kind of in the background sometimes.
Okay.
I may be wrong. I don't totally remember. Anyway.
I do want to say, literally the only note I have for this, like this entire issue, is in the cell where Sonic is in the catapult. He's got this face where he looks terrified, but his dialogue is like a completely different mood.
Well, given that he can't move his arms and legs because he's encased in ice, it reminds me of the start of Wind Waker.
Oh, yeah.
So the freedom fighters, or not freedom fighters, well, the winter peoples or whatever, are introduced, and then there's like a 1-week time skip where, like, the freedom fighters are training or something, which is strange because usually don't get skips like that in the middle of a story like this. Also, I find it weird that you leave off with Robotnik, like, searching the caves, but then, like, apparently he gave up or something, and I can't believe they twiddle his thumbs for a whole week. It's just kind of weird, and you almost could just ignore it. Nah, there was no time skip, and it would make no difference.
Well, especially since they aren't any better trained by later in the issue. They build a catapult, which is normal for them, and then they completely screw up and all get frozen.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so on the whole, not a lot going on here.
Agreed.
Not particularly.
The second story has a little bit going on. It's called Fortified, still written by DeCesare, art by Mawini. When Sonic is injured out in the forest, the freedom fighters hole up in an abandoned log fortress, and Rotor uses the aged blacksmithing equipment to craft a mech suit for Bunny, which sounds way cooler than it looks.
Yeah, but it is still nice to see Bunny getting attention.
Yes, that's true.
A mech suit is a bit of an overstatement. It's more like metal
Well,
armor.
Yeah, it's more just a suit of armor, but whatever.
Yeah.
Mawini's art, recently at least, has been almost like chibi.
Yeah, they're real
Like-
small.
They're like a solid 6 inches or a foot shorter than most of the other characters. It's weird.
Yeah, I'm looking at Antoine, and it's like, wow, he's got stubby legs, which is weird, because Mawini was a storyboarder for Sad AM, so, like, he should know best how to draw the characters.
Yeah, I don't. That's just maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. So this story is, it's fine. I like seeing Bunny get to fight. I like that she headbutts all the SWAT bots at once. And then, well, it's weird the way that it ends, because, they have Robotnik racing toward them in this big bus, and then, she uses the extendo legs to just have them go through the log wall, which, if that's made out of logs, that should just stop that thing entirely. But, then they go down a hill, and then they...
It was old and rotting.
Yeah,
Okay, fair enough. They
that's a
go
good
down the
point.
hill, but they're just not shown again.
It's fine. It's not important.
You don't even know if they crashed. They might have been completely fine.
No, Robotnik died again.
They just walk up there and they're like,
no.
"Hi, assholes."
Doesn't Robotnik have rocket boots that he could have used to escape from the bus anyway?
I do not believe we've seen that in the comics yet. He
Oh, I
did in
thought-
Sad AM, though.
I thought we had seen them in the comics.
I may be forgetting.
I
I
think
don't
you're
remember
right.
seeing them before Endgame.
Okay, I think you're right. I don't think we've seen them yet, now that I think about it.
It's telling that this is what we end up talking about with this issue.
It's boring. There's nothing really to talk about.
My one note I have really is, for some reason, when Bunny gets the armor, they're like, now you shall call me Robo Bunny, like it's some sort of notable transformation or something. It just has a weird vibe.
Yeah.
I don't like it, because it's like, isn't kind of the entire point of her character that she's already mechanized, so this feels a little redundant.
Yeah, it does.
Well, we can move away from that and
That's
into
probably the best.
a less redundant story, that is to say, the Sonic Triple Trouble special, which is funny, because just there was no other Sonic game out at the time, so we had to make one based off the Game Gear game that... I don't even know if the Game Gear game sold well, to be honest. It feels like nobody, remembers these.
No, I've seen plenty of people talk about the Game Gear games, but most of it is that they're not good.
Well, I guess Triple Trouble is the exception, because A, it definitely had the most unique stuff out of any of them, and B, it's got that new, shiny new remake fan game. So, the story for this one, or first story? I don't remember how many there are. There's more, but, the first story for this one is TTT Ripple, TTT Rubble, or TT Triple, TT Trouble, however you say it. It's written by Gallagher and drawn by Monarch. When Robotnik accidentally splits a Chaos Emerald in half, Sonic and Knuckles scramble across Angel Island and the newly created Triple Trouble Zone to find the pieces. The only thing standing in their way are each other and newcomer Knack the Weasel.
So, yes, Knack is here, and he's working for Robotnik, because the premise, I actually really like the premise. Robotnik is he's got a Chaos Emerald, cool, and he's going to, in his words, use it to drive my largest and most inefficient mega engine, which I love that he's had so much fun, has to make his creations inefficient on purpose.
That
Gotta
is
be evil.
very appropriate.
But then
Yeah.
through a stupid mishap, the emerald gets split in half.
Which,
This was the thing in Sonic Underground. I think they took from this when they did the Chaos Emerald episodes of that.
That is exactly what I was about to bring up, that this totally has vibes of that Sonic Underground special 3-parter, which also has Knuckles in it, actually.
In fairness, that's just an association thing with the Chaos Emeralds in general.
That's true. I guess before we have the Master Emerald, he kind of is just a Chaos Emerald guy. But yeah, I it's an interesting situation, and I love that It felt like totally nonchalant when Knuckles destroyed the, albeit revealed to be fake, Chaos Emerald. But when he does that, it's like, you can't do that. In my opinion, that's kind of lame. But in this one, the emerald splits in half, and it's like, oh no, what untold destruction could these cause? We have to recover them as soon as possible. Obviously, Robotnik wants them back, but he alludes to like some sort of disaster if he doesn't recover them anyway, as well.
Yeah,
Well,
that's pretty. That's nice. That there's actual consequences from them breaking.
Yeah, I'll say this. Gallagher's Knuckles here is kind of funky. He's like, hanging out on a lawn chair at the start, and only when he sees, oh, the Chaos Emerald, something's fucked up, better go after it. Then he gets over serious, but he's still kind of a complete klutz because he just gets hit by one rock and falls down onto a bunch of spiky sharp rocks. It feels a little less boring than Pender's Knuckles so far.
Speaking of Penders, let the record show that Gallagher owns Green Knuckles because he did it first.
Yes, because he's because he has the green sun that casts things in green and also keeps Lord English alive. Anyway, I still think that they don't really know how to draw Knuckles' gliding. Monarch does a slightly better job here than before, but it still doesn't look right.
Yeah, that's a common issue, honestly.
I think part of it is also that Sonic and Knuckles, at least in these classic designs, have differently shaped heads, and so if someone's used to drawing Sonic and then they try to draw Knuckles who looks similar to Sonic, it's like they can't quite wrap their heads around the shape of him. Anyway, so Triple Trouble Zone appears to be like a hall of mirrors.
Right, so the Chaos Emerald half apparently creates a whole zone. It creates Triple Trouble. I theorized quite literally, actually, because yeah, the entrance looks like a hall of mirrors, but then inside there's like already a Badniks, and it's fully inhabited, and there's even a strange shadowy Robotnik-esque figure that Sonic attacks at one point, which is like, huh?
This is the most baffling thing in the comic, is that they have him go through all of the Triple Trouble zones, Great Turquoise, Sunset Park, Meta Junglera with that stupid name, etc.
Forgot about that name.
But Atomic Destroyer Zone looks like the final boss of Sonic 3 with the planet in the background, and it looks like Robotnik is even inside the big robot from there. But it doesn't make any sense, because that can't be Robotnik, because he's not in here.
It's Robotnik.
As I said, I think this is a doorway to the Triple Trouble game. And so Sonic is in there, and that's why there's another Robotnik, or Eggman as he actually refers to him.
Yeah, he calls him Eggman. You can say that headcanon. I could not tell you that the writers were thinking of it that way as they were working on it. Maybe, but it's weird. But yeah, he gets through there. Here's the thing, though, is that this is the most adaptation Triple Trouble you're actually getting here, because everything else is completely inaccurate to the game.
There's not a whole lot there to work with in the first place.
I know, and it makes sense that they would do that, but it's like, you could at least have, whatever conflict is going on take place across Triple Trouble stages, instead of just having Sonic burn through all of them and then, alright, back to other stuff.
Yeah, it's literally just... Part 2 is Triple Trouble, and the rest of it is whatever they decide to come up with, which I should note, apparently they decided to title the parts of this issue. Part 1 doesn't have a title, but then Part 2 is Zone Sweet Zone, and then Part 3, Kidnapped, and Part 4, Blue Blur versus Rough and Red.
I forgot how long they did the whole separate chapters thing.
I think it makes a little more sense, at least, like in this lengthy special.
Yeah. Because Sonic gets through there and he grabs the emerald piece, but he gets shot in the back by Knack the Weasel, or Fang the Sniper, but they don't call him that at this point.
Right.
He has a prick expression throughout the whole special. I don't really know if there's really much to say about his personality.
There's not much of his personality really shown.
He's just a fierce bounty hunter that gets the job done.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. Well, Knuckles, meanwhile, does not die. He does not get impaled on spiky rocks. He instead gets saved by the Ancient Walkers, who are masked demigods, I guess?
I remember these folks. I remember reading the comics and being like, what the heck? What are these things? And maybe they're explained later, but they kind of just show up from time to time.
Yeah, there's not a lot to them. They look funky. One of them has like a necklace with like a what is that, a Mitsubishi logo?
Mercedes.
Mercedes. So that's weird. And they don't talk, they just make Knuckles some weird drug paste.
They get him high on ayahuasca.
I don't know what they I guess they do that just to have him not know where they are, but it's like they're also kind of ephemeral beings, so like can they just teleport?
But here's the thing also, Knuckles, I would assume it would be more they get him high so they can explain shit to him, but that's not even what happens. He just reads the cave paintings. It's like, at least get him high so he can have like a weird drug trip.
We will see Knuckles trip on drugs before the end of this podcast.
Oh good, okay, that's all I wanted in life.
But yeah, Knuckles gets back and he smacks the Knack, which is the greatest PlayStation 4 game. And Sonic jumps out of the water and arbitrarily attacks Knuckles again.
So I can kind of maybe accept that Knuckles is really easily irritable in these comics, even if I don't like that characterization. But this time, yeah, Sonic initiates the conflict. What the heck? There's no excuse for that.
You could make a rationalization for a number of the fights that they have, just not for all of them. There's so many.
It's kind of ridiculous.
Well, we're closing in eventually on the Supersonic versus Hyper Knuckles thing, and I think that's the last real major case of it.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that one though, because that one is just so absurd and over the top.
Yeah, yeah, no, they have to stop fighting. There's no Sally to break them up. Instead, Robotnik kind of does it on Knack's, like, watch phone, his Apple Watch. And they have to, like, Weekend at Bernie's him to talk to Robotnik before just letting him flop over.
Well, it's just like a little floppy puppet.
It's weird because his eyes are, like, halfway open, so, like, is he dead?
I think he's dazed.
They killed him. Congratulations.
Yeah, they go down into the Chaos Chamber, and they fuse the two emerald parts back together before they collide with the other emerald, and it just disappears.
Ooh, mysterious.
Sure is convenient that the emerald pieces will just fuse back together.
Yeah, you know, they're like Legos.
If your Legos are fusing together, you've got a problem with your Legos.
It seems like these game adaptation specials kind of have really quick wrap-ups.
They do. They go on for like 5 parts, but then like the 5th part is very short and it's just a very quick wrap.
Yeah, they never even fight Robotnik, so it's like, what?
Yeah, they fight Eggman, well, for one frame.
Well, we do see at least where the emerald ended up, and it's that the Ancient Walkers took it, and, dude, that's it. There's no explanation as to why. I don't think this is ever, like, followed up on. They just hold it up and it says, the cycle begins anew, which doesn't mean anything, because it was never meant to be broken, so...
What cycle? I don't even know what they're talking about.
Chaos Emeralds don't have cycles.
Some of the weirdness in the comics, I'm like, oh, this is weird, but they won't forget about it, and it will get even weirder. But it seems like they did forget about this point. Or maybe I'm just too stupid to figure out where they referenced it or explained it later. I don't know. We'll see, I guess?
The Ancient Walkers are... I mean, they're more unique looking than a lot of the deities that the comics would come up with, but in terms of context or really meaning, there just isn't a lot there, even though they do show up more. So I don't know. This is a weird story, contains very little of Triple Trouble, other than Knack, who will be a continuous recurring villain in the series, and I seem to remember liking him.
No, I think he's pretty good. He doesn't do a whole lot in this one, but
Yeah.
But what they don't tell you is that this is a stealth adaptation of 2 games, because we get a second story, a solo story for Tails called Submersible Rehearsal, written by Gallagher and drawn by Mawini, apparently. It looks a little more like Scott Shaw, but apparently it's Mawini. where Tails takes his new submarine, the Sea Fox, on a test run by attacking an underwater Robotnik factory and facing off against Octobot. So we've got a little bit of a Tails adventure thing going on here.
Okay, good. I thought I remembered the Sea Fox was introduced in Tails Adventure.
Yeah, I guess if you say if it has an element from the game, it's automatically an adaptation, then you could call this an adaptation. But the Sea Fox is really the only thing linking the two.
I suppose. I don't know what else you could call it. It's more game stuff than nothing, so that's already above average.
So, into the actual story, Tails is, as usual, heavily disrespected. But my question really is, why would Rotor make a fully functional sea vessel for Tails if he isn't allowed to use it at all?
It's a when you're older thing.
Yeah, but
I
typically
guess.
a when you're older thing is something that you don't give to them.
It's to incentivize Tails. I don't know.
Incentivize him to get older?
Yeah, sure. To not die fighting Robotnik.
I'm pretty sure he already doesn't want to die.
I mean, yeah, but
I'm not sure I do. Anyway.
Okay. That makes more sense than no explanation, I guess. What's really interesting about this story is that I didn't realize that the underwater robot maker, I think is what they call it initially, returns for a third time in this issue.
Yeah.
I'm surprised how important that thing has become with how many times it's shown up. But yeah, that's what Octobot is like protecting, and Tails has to blow it up.
Yeah, they even reference the miniseries here, which is like, I still feel like they should have, since that was a test run, it's like the first issue of this comic isn't really the first issue.
It does kind of feel like the miniseries maybe shouldn't be canon.
It gets contradicted, but it's also that it's way better as a setup. So it's like...
It is, yeah.
Push and pull. Anyway.
This is what I love about these comics, is there's so much stuff that shouldn't be canon, but the comics' approach to continuity is, unless it literally doesn't make any sense, it's all canon.
Everything is canon.
Oh, it's like Star Wars. It's like Star Wars was up until like 10 or 15 years ago, and Star Trek and the Star Trek books were up until like last year.
Yep.
Well, the real purpose of this story was basically to tease us about the Tales miniseries, which will be coming next episode. And on the flip side, we have, I guess, a different form of teasing, in the form of First Contact, written and drawn by Ken Penders. While saving his friend Vector the Crocodile from danger, Knuckles discovers clues alluding to a mysterious figure called Archimedes. They lead him to some robots to fight, and then more nothing.
So yeah. I guess in this special, we get 3 game adaptations, because since Vector's here, this is automatically an adaptation of Chaotix, right?
Damn right.
I would say that, like, the existence of a Chaotix comic supersedes that, but technically, there is a Sonic Universe arc that does the Tails adventure story years and years down the line. So I can't say that.
Yeah.
Anyway, Vector's here.
Yeah.
Doesn't do a whole lot. He just gets saved.
Not really.
Like, thanks, and he walks away, so Knuckles can have his time to be confused.
It does bring the question, though. It seems like Vector lives on Angel Island? Or excuse me, a floating island?
Yes, we should mention that the comics have not been calling it Angel Island the whole time. It does not stop being called the Floating Island until, like, 2004.
Jesus Christ, okay.
But yeah, no, Vector is just here to almost fall in some lava, and then Knuckles turns into a head tentacle octopus monster to glide and save him. Yeah, no, Sonic just notices the word Archimedes with an arrow scribed on a rock, and just walks in that direction.
Did you say Sonic notices
he
it?
Did say Sonic. He meant Knuckles.
Okay, I know you said Knuckles. I know you meant Knuckles, but you said Sonic.
Red Sonic.
Red Sonic.
Oh,
Yeah,
he is, I guess.
Yeah, it's like Linux Mint and Ubuntu. Linux Mint is just green Ubuntu.
You really have been pulling out all the stops with the Linux jokes in this series, and I'm feeling left out.
It's funny because I don't actively use Linux because I have trouble with it.
Anyway, Knuckles' clues... Yeah, no, they really don't lead him much of anywhere. He gets to talk to Catweasel the Cockatoo, which... What?
He just inexplicably hates.
I love that he's walking along, and then a bird just says, "Nice day if it doesn't rain, eh, Knuckles?" And he's just like, "Catweasel!" Like it's some long time.
You
nemesis.
motherfucker.
He already knows the motherfucker.
It's like, you know, this is the same thing we were saying last time about Angel Island being inhabited. Knuckles has friends and, like, rivals, except his rival is just a bird.
Truly the most despicable of creatures.
So here's
But literally, this bird says and does nothing wrong, and Knuckles is, like, angry at him.
so
They've got a deep history.
this bird is more of a nemesis than Sonic is to Knuckles.
True.
Correct.
After interacting with his arch enemy, it turns out this is actually also an adaptation of Sonic the Hedgehog and Knuckles, because it has both Fire Breath and the Lumberjack bosses in this, which means it has to be Sonic 3 and Knuckles.
You're really not
Okay,
going to let this go, are you?
No, I'm not.
You know what? I'm all for the making fun of these comics.
I
Well,
kind of beg for it.
They really do seem like they're begging for it.
yeah, it's not, this is not a good one. It's, you know, I'll say it's got more action going on than other Pender's Knuckles solo stories, but it has the same problem where it's just Knuckles wandering around not getting the answer to things. He does hear voices in his head, but...
Oh, good. Knuckles is schizophrenic.
Yeah.
But I was gonna... Being more action-filled does not mean better. There's been plenty of issues already that have proven that.
No, I know. I'm just saying it is.
I get what you're saying.
We had neither action nor anything else last time.
Yeah. No, it's just it's frustrating when so many of these issues, especially these specials, their first stories will be like, okay, that's not bad, and then the rest of it is just filler. Just cut it down to the first story.
Yeah, or if you're gonna have somebody tormenting Knuckles from afar, just start the story with that, and then have him find out who it is.
This could have been integrated into the main story by, I don't know, maybe have the fucking whatever they were called be the ones tormenting Knuckles.
Yeah, the Ancient Walkers.
The Ancient Walkers, thank you.
That is not a bad idea. Or I also don't think I would mind it as much. I think the problem with these whole, let's build mystery comics is that they don't come to anything on their own. But if you had Knuckles like wandering about the floating island and he hears voices in his head, but then he suddenly sees Knack and he's like, aha.
That was
and then it goes into the plot. So that this whole mystery they're building is like, you know, sort of dropped with little hints throughout the main stories. I think that would be a lot more tolerable.
Yeah, it would have made more sense to integrate that into the main story, but poor communication between writers is also a staple of these comics, so...
Yeah. It's almost like we could write these comics better than they could.
Well, we keep saying that, but again, it's another thing that the editors should have been handling this whole time.
No, I mean, we say it as a joke.
Yeah.
To an extent, you know.
So yeah,
well,
it has...
I think, yeah.
Yeah, it has a, not strong necessarily, but, you know, serviceable enough main story, really weak backup stories, and, so we know that this special is not standing up to Sonic in Your Face, right? That's a given.
No.
Oh, no, definitely not. I think that's the best special we've had.
Definitely.
So we know that. Is it better than Sonic and Knuckles?
Personally, I would say so.
Yes.
I enjoyed the main plot better,
Yeah.
and I think the Tails sub-story is better than the two Knuckles' solo things.
Well, in Knuckles' solo things in both stories is really just him wandering around talking to no one, so...
Yeah.
But at least we only got one instead of two in this one.
No, that is fair.
Alright, well, so this has got the number 2 on our special rankings so far.
I'm gonna rank all of them?
Maybe. I don't know.
It may get muddled, but with 3, I think it's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Alright, well, moving on to Sonic number 27, Pender's got to draw the cover this time.
So yeah, actually, I don't know if you agree, but I love this cover.
No, the cover's not bad.
I think it's very distinctive and it's plot relevant too, which is always a nice bonus.
It's fine. Yeah, it's okay. Sonic's face is maybe a little pudgy for me, but yeah, nothing particularly objectionable. But our story for this one is A Scrambled Hedgehog, written by Penders, drawn by Mawini. Sonic sustains a head injury and loses his memory, so Robotnik tricks him into waging an attack on Knothole.
I remember this one.
I remember this one really well.
Yeah, it's a memorable plot line. Not to say it's necessarily original, because the hero turns bad. It's not anything super original, but
there was a Sat AM episode that did the same thing.
Yes, yes, there was. That is true. But I think it's a decent trope, and I think it's pulled off pretty well.
Yeah,
I think it's all right. I will say it leaves a bad first impression because it starts off with two characters whose names are Kix-a-Lot and Sleuth Doggy Dog.
So, oh my gosh. It is funny how the comics sometimes go out of their way to explain things, and sometimes suddenly the Freedom Fighters have two spies in Robotropolis that aren't Uncle Chuck, by the way.
Both named after hip-hop artists.
Wait, these two are supposed to be Freedom Fighters?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, for some reason, I thought they weren't.
They're also the first characters to have proportions where dressing up as a SWAT bot actually makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yes, that's one thing this has over SEGA, although that's a small thing.
Yeah, but Sonic reads their secret graffiti message, and he's going, but he gets knocked out, and he gets knocked in the head, and he wakes up, and they brainwash him.
Is it too much to ask for a cool lead up to Sonic losing instead of just running into a SWAT bot and knocking himself out?
Should have been ambushed by another Metal Sonic. That's what I would do.
Oh, that would be rad, yeah.
That would be a cool way to introduce another Metal Sonic, is just Sonic runs into him.
Heck, you wanna amp up the stakes. You have Evil Sonic and Metal Sonic get launched at the Freedom Fighters at the same time.
Ooh.
You couldn't make it too crazy, though, because then that would derail from Sonic becoming the antagonist.
Probably. Well, and I don't even know what the Freedom Fighters could possibly do that would be strong enough, to be honest. But
that'd be insane. But yeah, by pure happenstance, Sonic loses his memory, and Robotnik takes advantage.
Sonic loses his memory, but in a way that's so selective that we can still have this happen, because Sonic, he still is like, oh, I can send you in the general direction, but I don't know where exactly it is. You'll have to figure it out. But Sonic just, oh, hey, I remember the way, even though I don't remember that these people are my friends.
Yeah, it's like, that is kind of weird. Because he's got, like, little bits and pieces that he can remember, but I would think that those bits and pieces would include, wait a minute, these people, I feel like I shouldn't just be attacking them.
Yeah. We also get this whole sequence of Sonic trying to break into the base, and I like Sonic's, like, laser cannon on its hand. That's pretty rad. But the Freedom Fighter base has, like, a ton of controls and, like, traps and, like, blast doors that they can use on Sonic, which, like, what? We didn't have any of this stuff before, and they're perfectly willing to, like, try to kill their friend with only a scant suspicion that he's not acting in their best interest.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's a scant suspicion. It's pretty obvious.
I am totally with Devin on this one. I think it is absolutely absurd that they would try to kill Sonic without even contacting him.
I just feel like they'd ask him first. Have a TV screen where they're like, Sonic, what's going on? He's like, I'm gonna punch you guys in the balls or something. I don't know.
That would be more reasonable, I think. That aside, I pretty much have to say I like the sequence overall. It's a cool bit of, like, 3 different perspectives all seeing the same thing, because you've got Sonic obviously in there, you got the Freedom Fighters watching, you've also got Robotnik observing the situation, and so I don't know, it's neat, I think, to have all these different perspectives on the same problems.
Yeah, and they treat the idea of an evil Sonic with the appropriate amount of weight. I'll say that. Them trying to kill him, I don't know, but the fact that they have, like, an air raid siren and they pile up sandbags and have the barracks up, just because he's coming for them and he just burns through the whole thing, I do like that.
This is more leaning into, he's unstoppable, but again, I think it does make for an entertaining story, that's for sure.
Yeah. I just think of him in like a cross between Sonic and the Terminator. That was all I was really thinking.
Oh boy.
Um,
Um,
and this issue doesn't really end. It just kind of has a cliffhanger with Sonic singing "Bad Boys" as he's about to beat up all his friends.
such a weird thing to note to end on.
Well, it's like between that and the friggin' Snoop Dogg and Sir Mix-a-Lot references, it's all dating the comics severely.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not a Snoop reference.
I mean, but Snoop doesn't even go by that name anymore.
Well, yeah, he just goes by Snoop now, but
So back to the story. You mentioned how the freedom fighters suddenly have a whole bunch of elaborate traps and stuff. That is a little strange, but I think even stranger is now apparently they're not living underground. There's just a village in the forest.
I would like to point out that first showed up in the earlier issue, and I forgot to bring it up despite it being in my notes.
I must have also not noticed.
But
I think it happened the same time that Rosie showed up.
Yes, I believe so. But
Yeah, so
They were
it's
indoors a lot of the
weird.
time.
It's sudden. Knothole is suddenly overground.
But we also have the underground cave network where they have all their stuff, so
Yeah,
it would be the best of both worlds if it made sense.
Yeah, I don't get why you even have the whole underground bit. What's the point? Couldn't you just walk there? It's not like I went underground and there's like a portal and then I come up in a different dimension. It's still in the forest.
I don't know, that could happen in these comics, knowing knowing them.
Like personally in Sat AM, I was always like, why doesn't Robotnik just like burn the forest or something? I mean, he tries to like cut it down at one point, but I thought it was a little far-fetched they could hide from him in the Great Forest. So I liked, honestly, that they had it underground in the comics, but so it's a little disappointing to me to have it back to that.
Well, we don't spend a lot of time there, because we're mostly just looking forward to the fight in Sonic the Hedgehog number 28.
Yeah, so a two-parter.
Oh
I will say
boy,
that's kind of rad.
that is pretty cool.
I think that's probably what makes this story feel memorable to me, is that it had enough time to breathe, even if it has a lot of problems.
Definitely.
With, although that said, this one has 2 stories in it, this issue does, but, we start off with Saturday Night's All Right for a Fight, written by Penders, drawn by Winnie, obviously, because it's the follow-up to the other one. After a protracted battle with the Freedom Fighters, the amnesiac Sonic finally regains his sense of self and sabotages Robotnik's data on Knothole's location.
I like that the cover has all the freedom fighters down, and then Antoine is just in the corner box saying, "Give peace a chance."
Yeah, I bet he's happy that that he just had to endure Sonic running through him rather than getting punched and kicked a bunch. There's not a lot to say about the first half of the story, though. It really is just a big slugfest.
Yeah,
I mean, it kind of jumped out to me how ridiculously brutal Sonic acts. Not only does he not remember his friends at all, but he's like, he goes in and tries to like choke Sally, which like, what the heck, man?
Yeah, I mean, that's not how Sonic would act during a fight against someone he hated.
well, Robotnik was training him.
You know, that's a good point. We did brush over that, but he trains with the robot copies of the Freedom Fighters from the Sally miniseries, which is cool continuity. So yeah, I guess Robotnik could have brainwashed him and be like, "Nah, these are like evil incarnate." Okay, I'll accept that, but still, it's shocking to see him act that way.
It is
weird. It
bizarre.
is shocking.
More shocking even is the other element of the Sally miniseries that they bring in, which is that the friggin' friend fighters show up to jump Sonic all at once.
Yeah, the fucking B team shows up.
Well, plus Antoine, but
I kind of like that, actually.
I don't hate the idea of it. It's kind of fun.
Because it's sort of the idea that even though the primary freedom fighters, the main ones, are like better trained and more competent overall, they're the ones that Robotnik is familiar with too, and so Sonic was trained against them specifically.
Sure.
And then he actually has a tougher time against this B team that has not gone as many missions and Robotnik has those data on.
well,
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
I'm gonna say yes with an asterisk, because I think that is the idea, but he still beats literally all of them in one hit, including Antoine, up until Dylan, who for some reason is able to just waited to attack, I guess.
Well,
Uh,
he used the fact that he is completely forgettable, and so Sonic forgot about him too.
I suppose it must
Fair.
be.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Maybe they didn't portray it perfectly, but I do still think that was the idea. I like the second half of the fight too, in that they like turn off the lights and you have this really cool red lighting on the characters.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
like the
doesn't look too
emergency
bad. I
lighting.
think that it contrasts a little too much with the stark white of the edges of the book anyway, though. That's the main
Eh,
thing that makes the specials feel special in a lot of ways, is just that the art goes all the way to the edge of the page.
Hmm.
But yeah, Sonic gets knocked out, and when he wakes up, everybody is already better, which, make a note of that. Everybody has mostly recovered. Except Bunny and Antoine, who have just disappeared. They're just not in the story after they get beat up.
they got really badly beaten up.
Yeah, so they realize what was wrong with him. He had a bug on him, etc. And they're like, "All right, it's time to go dunk on the Robonick."
Okay, so real fast, I would like to point out this is like the third or fourth time Robotnik has had a spy or someone in Knothole. Why doesn't he know where Knothole is at this point?
So in this story, it's actually explicitly stated that the Freedom Fighters have set up some sort of jamming frequency, which is smart considering they have had spies before, like you said.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, but it seems like at this point Robotnik could have figured it out before they had set up the jamming. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it.
It's what it is just that they've had this as a plot point so much that it
Yeah.
feels a little bit like something should actually be getting through by now, and he only has to learn where it is once is the issue.
Right. Well, the story does portray it as he almost finds out because Sonic, when he's defeated, Robotnik is just kind of waiting for a while. He's like, we haven't heard from Sonic. He was probably close enough to Knothole. Should we just send in the demolition tractors? And then in the nick of time, Sonic is like, hey, and checks in. So he is then tricked into thinking he was just led along, and it was like a fake entrance, and then all the tractors get destroyed.
Yeah,
So that's the reason that he doesn't continue to investigate. But the idea is definitely that he was this close to finding it.
sure.
You know, I was gonna make fun of you, but they really do call them demolition tractors instead of what they obviously are, which is called tanks.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't want to use the word tank.
They have previously, I'm pretty sure. Whatever. Can't dwell on it. That's become a mantra. So yeah, a decently paced story between these two issues, I would say, is its main hook, I would say.
Yeah.
And one that both does and does not tie into the second story of the issue, Growing Pains, Part 1. Written by Malager? Written by Gallagher, art by Monarch. Bitter from his injuries at the hands of an amnesiac Sonic and his infantilization from the rest of the Freedom Fighters, Tails sets off for an unknown island where he falls in love with a female fox named Fiona. Unbeknownst to him, Fiona is actually an auto-automaton created by Robotnik.
I don't like that they're writing Tails like to be angry about this. Cause like Sonic wasn't in control, man.
He also appears, this was why I was making a note of it, is that he appears perfectly fine at the end
Yeah.
of the Hypnotized Sonic story.
That is also true.
Communication between writers, as usual, I guess.
Yeah.
The editor should have caught that one, yeah. Now, I think that the idea of Tails feeling like they're not treating him like a real
That's
member
fair.
of the group, that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. But him being pissed at Sonic because he beat him up despite having amnesia and Sonic is legitimately sorry, that's annoying.
I agree, really, I do, but I guess you could say he was already sort of irritable, and then getting beat up, it kind of flares up the emotions, if you will.
I suppose. The
because
issue for me is that it's so close to almost being that. And I totally forgot about how they were treating Tails in the Triple Trouble special, how they sort of planted the seeds to this, but then here in this issue, they also have to sort of make up other times that that Tails has been treated like too much like a baby or whatever.
Yeah, maybe they should have built it a little more.
It is indeed a character arc. It is something.
No, I think it's neat that they're trying to be a little more nuanced than just, oh, they think Tails is a kid, but he's really more capable and he's perfectly fine as a freedom fighter, which is true. But
Yeah,
this shows that he still does have things to learn because he does the
yeah,
classic I'm angry, I'm gonna run away from home thing. So he obviously isn't quite there, even if they do need to give him more respect.
Yeah.
yeah.
So the rest of this story is he takes the sea fox out to a uninhabited, well, sort of inhabited island, and meets Fiona, who occupies a weird space in the comic overall, just as a character. I don't know if we can get into it. We can't get into it right now because for right now she's just, oh, we need Tails to have a girlfriend fox that he falls in love with because I guess she's pretty. Um, we know literally nothing about her.
He is being pretty jumping the gun, if you will, I guess. With this, he's like, oh, look, it's a fox in distress. Oh, wow, okay, I guess we're girlfriend and boyfriend now or whatever. I think they probably time compressed it a bit though, because it's just a short story in the same issue as the main story.
I just mean, if you're gonna tell me the two characters are in love, Fiona, it makes sense because she's secretly a robot, so she'll just act however she needs to. For Tails, though, it's like I would like at least anything explaining why a character likes another. That's like my bare minimum for a romance in a story.
I mean, it really just seems like Tails likes Fiona because she's cute.
I guess puberty.
I mean, he's like fucking 8. He's not going through puberty.
Is he 8
I
in the comics? Is that established?
I don't
Inside
know.
AM they say he's 10, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
still too young, but
It's still too early for puberty.
in any case, the highlight of this issue is that it's all a Robotnik plot, and he does a Hitchcock reference, so that's weird. But other than that, he kind of totally gets the drop on Tails, and I want to talk about his quote unquote roboticizer here. It looks like it's just a friggin' blender.
Yeah, it does. I don't know. I mean, you don't. It's hard to say like what a roboticizer would look like, so they just they just made it as menacing as possible, I guess.
In every other case, it's just a machine that goes up with like a magic beam of light. This looks like
Right.
in Doctor Who when they have the big saw blades that pull your head apart to make you a Cyberman.
Oh, you are right. It is a lot like that, actually.
Jesus. I've never watched that much Doctor Who. That's gnarly.
I have to
They
say,
don't
good
show
job.
it.
That reference is actually more apt than most of your Doctor Who references. um, but well, like once again, like the rules of robotization are kind of weird, so maybe that is what they were going for. Although that's pretty brutal, if so. I will say, yeah, I do like this, and we get an absolutely killer Robotnik line when he reveals himself from Tails. When Tails is like, "Oh no, you can't do this to me," and then he's like, "You wanted to be treated as an adult, eh? Welcome to the real world."
That's
Get
depressing.
fucked, Tails. Shows you what happens when you want to be treated mature.
Yeah.
But yeah, it ends on a cliffhanger. I will say they do like it feels like a misdirection here where Fiona looks at him and says Tails is done for, and she looks like slightly worried. Maybe actually I admit it's hard to read Monarch's expressions sometimes, but it makes you think that the robot is going to rebel, which isn't what happens in the next issue.
Yeah, we'll get to it there. I do think it's supposed to be. I think that is on purpose. They're trying to make it ambiguous.
Well, let's hurry along then to Sonic number 29. Look at this cover.
That cover's awesome, but that cover's
Rad.
also writing checks that the story will not be able to deposit, or whatever the term is.
I think cash is the word you're looking for, but yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it really builds it up too high. It's almost not even fair. I mean, how do you follow up a cover like that?
I mean, yeah.
Well, you could have Spaziant draw the issue too, but he probably, they would probably give him, whichever stories he had to work on in advance. I'd have to imagine that he's not one of the faster artists because it takes a lot of work to look like this.
Well, it worked to actually look good. Also,
Yeah.
there's a certain dragon on this cover.
Yes, we've got
Indeed.
Dulcie.
I think I made it pretty clear when we were watching Saturday I didn't like Dulcie. So, oh boy.
She's not one of the more popular characters among anybody, and she even gets a whole introductory page here, which is funny because that's more than she got in Sat AM.
Yeah, she literally just shows up in Sat AM. It's kind of funny.
But I would say overall, the use of Dulcie in these comics is safe enough. It's not like a problem. She's not annoying in these comics, I don't think.
I mean,
She's not that interesting, but
I think you've mentioned in the past that she doesn't really show up that much.
I mean, I can see why you wouldn't like Dulcie because there just isn't much to her, but to me, she just comes off as more. I don't really have strong feelings one way or the other on the character. So
in the case of this, at least so far, yeah, I agree.
yeah, she's fine here in the story for this one, which is called Steel-Belted Sally, written by DeCesare, drawn by Mawini. When the freedom fighters obtain a portable de-roboticizer, they formulate a plan to have a roboticized Sally sabotage Robotnik's machines. However, when the plan goes awry, it's up to Dulcie to save the day.
A really dumb plan. I want to point that out.
Yeah,
it's a terrible idea.
I have many problems with this plot. That is the first one. Yeah, so we found a de-roboticizer. Let's use it to try to make a cool plan where one of us turns into a robot and then wrecks Robotnik. Like, is there seriously not anything better they could use that for? I don't think... No, they did, at least in, like, the miniseries a few times, have, like, oh, Chuck is here, Mutsky is roboticized. So they've shown that people close to these freedom fighters are roboticized, so would they really not want to try to use it on one of them?
Yeah, I honestly, if I were writing this, I would have had them try to de-roboticize Uncle Chuck.
Especially given that... Okay, well, I was going to say, especially given that he invented the roboticizer, but they don't know that, so...
Right. And technically we don't know if that's the same in this continuity, but I guess it is.
We don't yet know that, but yeah, it is. What baffles me is that why is there a portable de-roboticizer?
That is my second problem with this
This
plot.
is a very good point.
Why would Robotnik invent such a thing?
Why would he have de-roboticization at all? Yeah.
So maybe this is headcanon. Maybe this is Uncle Chuck. You know, this is Uncle Chuck's doing. He actually has regained his sentience, I guess.
But Robotnik
working...
knows that the de-roboticizer is on board, and he doesn't say anything like that.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Never mind then.
He mentions it very nonchalantly, like, "Oh yeah, it was a transport carrying a de-roboticizer." Like,
I mean,
maybe
like they do, yeah. Maybe that's just something that. Well, aren't they also going to use it to roboticize Sally? Right?
No, what their plan is to get Sally into Robotropolis, get her roboticized,
right,
but have her regain some control over herself. Which, if we have a frigging little tiny like bug that you can put on a roboticized person to have them keep their free will, just make more of those.
You know, the funny thing is, even if they wanted to do this plan, they wouldn't need the de-roboticizer because of that thing, as long as someone's willing to stay a robot until they can figure one out, which, you know, given how desperate they were, they might.
Or they could just make a huge bag of those, run into Robotropolis, and just slap them on any roboticized person they find.
I don't know that it works when you're already roboticized, but I mean, this is kind of just pseudoscience, and so maybe.
Well, and, you know, the other thing is that Robotnik does indeed find the bug anyway, so...
True.
Right.
But they couldn't have anticipated that. Whatever. It's not a good setup. There's even more problems that I could say with it, but I don't even know if it's worth it. Like, why does it only have power to de-roboticize one person? Can you not give it more power? Does it have a lithium battery and none of you have USB-C cords? I don't know. They don't ask that question. Mostly because I don't know if lithium batteries even existed in 1995, but...
I'm pretty sure they did.
Less common.
The story also uses the trope of, oh, it's only got enough power for one use, and I'm not smart enough, despite the fact I can make a thing that keeps your free will when you're roboticized, to recharge it.
Yeah, Rotor can make a thermos. I mean...
Yeah, I mean...
That's pretty smart.
If he can do that, he should be able to reverse engineer this, yeah.
Well, that's another thing, is do they lose the de-roboticizer?
Here's the thing,
because they use it, so they should be able to study it.
Well, so they go through this whole plan where they get Sally captured, but then it turns out that she doesn't actually, the device doesn't work, or Robotnik gets rid of it, and she captures all of them, and they're all stuck inside the base. And so Dulcie, as a last-ditch effort, rushes in there with the deroboticizer, and deroboticizes Sally, shoots some fire at Robotnik, gets all of them out of there. But after she uses the deroboticizer, disappears. Gone from the story, no explanation.
Nice. That's how you know that's a sign of good writing.
Definitely.
It's like the stereotype about Apple products where, oh, my phone has an update, but it's too old, so I gotta throw it in the garbage.
My phone ran out of battery and Apple doesn't put the lightning cord on it anymore.
Oh, there is, I think, new EU legislation that says they're gonna have to move to USB-C, I think.
That's only in the EU, though.
It's possible they'll just do the change across the board, though.
I think it would be hilarious if Apple decided to just get rid of the charging port entirely. But that's not realistic because developers also use it, so...
But I think people will probably, try to import European phones is the thing I'm imagining.
It would depend. It would all depend on if they would work over here or not.
Oh yeah, they might try to region lock them.
Not even region locking. European carriers just use different 4G and 5G bands than we do over here.
Anyway, we're a little off topic again. I don't like the story overall, but there are a few moments that, honestly, I find some of the gags are stupid, especially like the references and whatnot, but I like that this story, I'm not sure if this is the first time or the first time I'm noticing it, they bring in the thing from Side AM where Snively insults Robotnik, and then he tries to cover for it, because at one point, Robotnik is saying, the Freedom Fighters tried to trick me again, all because I'm so trusting and innocent. And Snively's like, like a shark. And he's like, what was that? He's like, I like the dark.
Not one of his better ones, but yeah. I like the similar bit later on where Sonic makes fun of Robotnik and Snively has to cover up that he laughed at the joke.
Yeah, Snively's like, where's the deroboticizer, Sonic? I trade it for a picture of Robotnik. Never know when you'll have to blow your nose.
I'm surprised that we ended up being Snively likers. I didn't think that was going to be the case.
Snively is a lot like Antoine in that he's just beaten down and deserves better, even though he's the villain. But, you like villains if they're done well. And so I have to like him for that reason.
So yeah, on the whole, kind of a poor story, especially for... If you're going to introduce Robot Sally, you gotta make her, well, A, look less bad than this, because she looks like lumpy despite being metal. And B, you have to make her more threatening somehow. She could be literally any robot.
Give her a gun or something.
Yeah.
Spoilers, but when we get other main characters roboticized, I think the designs and the threat is much more real.
That's because they let Spaziant draw them.
Well, that's probably it, actually.
That's how you do it. You let the person who actually knows what the fuck they're doing draw them.
I suppose.
Yeah, just look at the cover. That version of Robo Sally.
Yeah, that Robo Sally looks legitimately threatening.
Well, speaking of things that are the opposite of that, the second story for this comic is Growing Pains, the second part. Still giggity and manicky. Tails manages to escape Robotnik's death trap, and is forced to face Fiona and Robotnik in battle. He manages to recover a map to a Robotnik satellite on the other side of Mobius, and resolves to head there alone.
So, let me just say, as a kid, this, was horrible. This traumatized me, kind of, because the idea of, I made a fake robot to fool Tails, okay, whatever, that's bad enough. But then, Fiona continues to fight Tails, or starts to fight Tails. He didn't fight her before in this issue, and Tails is like, "Wait, no, don't hurt me." And then she's taunting him, "Oh, you always hurt the one you love." And there's this really quite brutal moment where where she's trying to drown Tails and almost does it. It's man, intense.
Yeah, and well, actually, I'd say in terms of action, as weird as it is, this is probably one of the better fights Gallagher's ever done, just because it contains both a Robotnik and an enemy that is kind of on Tails' level, but Tails is totally alone, and he's not just Sonic for the 100th time, so he's not overpowered.
There's also a roboticized tree.
There's some good back and forth. Oh yeah, that's true.
I never thought of the idea of roboticizing a tree, but now that it's been put into my brain, it kind of makes sense.
No, Robotnik hates plants, so...
That's true.
Well, hey, Sonic Chaos was already out by this time, and that had Mecha Green Hill Zone, so...
That is true.
Ah, yes.
I will say, Tails gets out of the robot blender by just clogging it with his tails, and somehow that does not completely grind up his bones.
No, he just says the fur from his tails.
So does that mean that, like, his tails are mostly fur?
I mean, I think foxtails are primarily fur. There's not a whole lot of
suppose.
actual tails there.
I guess I'm being weird about it because I'm also remembering that completely bonkers scene in Sonic Lost World where Tails' tails are prehensile and he picks something up with one of them.
He's actually a monkey.
Oh no.
But yeah, Tails, he beats Fiona by just dunking her in the water such that, actually, she just completely beats herself by landing in the water and then just rusting so much that she's petrified.
No, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really bad robot design.
This is something that's come up across a lot of Sonic media, actually, is Robotnik's badniks are inconsistently waterproof.
Yeah.
Well, because the games have plenty of water badniks, and the comics have some water-specific badniks, but whether a given robot works underwater if it's not a water badnik, completely up to chance.
You'd think you would just make it standard with how often it happens, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so I guess this story is actually better than the main story in most ways.
I would have to agree, yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
And it ends on both a cliffhanger because it's foreshadowing that Tails is gonna take a trip in the Tails miniseries, which we'll be covering next time. Which I thought that he just heads straight there, but he actually does go back to Freedom HQ for the main issue of the story to play out, obviously, because he's in the first story. And also, he starts there at the start of the Tails story. But this story also ends on a tragedy, because Fiona Robot gets rusted and petrified, and so he just puts her on the island, and he's like, oh, I'll probably come back at some point, and he never does.
Well, there's a fairly decent reason for that, if I recall.
Yes,
but it is tragic for this robot that has suddenly become, like, sentient or something, because it has clearly a sad expression and is, like, crying in the final frame.
Yeah, instead it's just like, it's a Fry's Dog episode where they're just gonna be waiting there for 1,000 years.
My god. Alright, yeah.
And the other half of this tragedy is that we eventually find the real Fiona Fox, and she has absolutely no interest in Tails whatsoever.
Okay, that is what I was alluding to. Given the fact he finds the real Fiona, I would think is the reason that he forgets about this one.
Yeah, which, maybe that's a spoiler, I don't care that much, but yeah, weird ending here, for the end of our episode.
Kind of a depressing ending.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally, yeah. Like I said, this story's messed up, in my opinion.
Kind of is.
You'd think that this would be like a life-altering experience for Tails. You know, I guess that's part of how it plays into the maturity thing, but...
I guess, yeah, the poor kid has to deal with some trauma.
I had to kill my first girlfriend.
That's rough, buddy.
That is rough, my man.
So, that is it for tonight. I thought today's comics were, weird. Weird with some good ideas and some questionable execution.
I thought they were comics.
I think I agree. There was text, there was pictures, there were definitely comics.
I really don't have much to say beyond that. They're just...
It was a bit of a transitional episode. It was a bit of an in-between.
Yeah, like...
There was some good, there was some bad.
Yeah.
Pretty much average overall.
Well,
Yeah.
Whether it's good or bad, next time on Deep Dive Zone, I can guarantee that all three of the issues will at least be consistent, because we are going to be covering the follow-up here, the Tails mini-series, as well as Sonic number 30. And the Knuckles Chaotic special, which I have no idea what to expect from that one.
Fun.
It's gonna be weird. But with all that said, we're done for tonight. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can email us at deepdivezonepod@gmail.com or reach us at @deepdivezone on Twitter. Feel free to share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. I hope you did enjoy, and we will see you next week.